Ballers, what's going on? It's Preacher, and 5.4 is upon us, dropping in a couple of days. I have been a little bit quiet on 5.4. I've made the mistake in the sort of experience I've picked up doing this, is that talking a little bit early about patch changes can lead to only bad things, because then they change immediately and it's kind of a bad time for everybody. But 5.4 is coming. We've got official patch notes. We're pretty sure things are going to stay the same. I just want to focus a little bit on Warriors, my historically main class throughout most of the game. Let's not mess that about. But I dropped it in Mists of Pandaria. I did, as is so many other people. We gave up. We were like, this just ain't my jam no more. And that's a bit sad. And historically, the final patch, the one where we're going into the end of an expansion, the end of Vanilla, the end of Wrath, the end of TBC, the end of course, Cataclysm, is when the Warriors really started to shine. And it's one thing that Warriors sort of accepted, is that the youth of an expansion, or the youth of the game, is typically not a great time for Warriors because of Rage and how Rage works, and we generally have to suck a little bit of an old sour grape before we get to that good stuff where we tend to be just happy bunnies. Now, going over the 5.4 patch notes for the Warrior, we can see that, well, there's some changes coming, but they're not going to be enough, are they? I mean, it doesn't take much of an expert to look at these changes and kind of think, you know, that's just not going to make it happen. Oh, we don't think it will. We can always be wrong. There could be some little changes in the future. They may have something in mind that actually will scale really nicely, but on the face of it, it looks pretty garbage. It doesn't look good at all. Like I said, Warriors had a typically bad time in Mists of Pandaria. Melee overall didn't really have a blast. The Rogues kind of did okay. The DKs pulled alongside, but generally not the best old time, especially when it came to Mr. Lei Shen. What the problem was is, straight up, we just didn't do enough damage. We were middle of the road at best. The perfect play would leave us kind of middle of the road. That's never fun. And ultimately, we just don't really do well at surviving stuff. We don't do well at that. Now, 5.4 is addressing a couple of issues, but mainly towards arms. Fury is pretty much staying the same. They're kind of just saying, Furies, alright, you'll be able to use pole arms with Titan Grip. Great. And Prot's getting some slight DPS increase, a little bit, but it's been the bottom DPS spec, or considered to be the worst tank DPS spec going, so will that be enough? Probably not. We're not looking to see that. In fact, defensively, they're okay, not great, middle of the road again on the Warriors. It's Arms that's getting the big attention. Arms is getting the big attention. There's several changes coming in for Arms, specifically the way Slam works. Let me just read this for you. I don't often like quoting patch notes. Any old idiot can read them, but just to let you know. Slam now deals 25% more damage, but the rage cost has also been increased by 25% as well. While Sweeping Strikes is active, Slam will deal 35% of damage dealt against the primary target to all other enemies within 2 yards. And targets affected by Colossus Smash receive 10% more damage. That's a lot of damage bonuses, and that's a lot of extra cleave that's been piled on top of Slam. This gives us something that Arms was asking for. Arms was asking for a more interesting rotation. There's no doubt about that. Arms got hammered to the ground with simplicity. Not that Warriors traditionally had a particularly difficult DPS aspect to them. They were always big, meaty, smash you in the face with my weapon kind of stuff, and then also just relatively simple to play. But it got changed, and now it was a case of, oh, Mortal Strike just gives you some overpowers to use, and you use them in between until Mortal Strike's back off cooldown, and it was really dull and static and boring, and God, it sucked. And then not only that, once you got into good style heroic gear, it was actually just a crap spec anyway, and Fury pulled ahead due to our reliance on critical strike. So they also asked for some AoE damage. It was like, oh, Cleave. Yeah, I'm pretty good at Cleave. I've got Sweeping Strikes at my command, and I also have Brostorm, and Brostorm is awesome, and that's pretty much it. I can Thunderclap, and then I can drop some Whirlwinds, and it's all a little bit fidgety. Whirlwind, of course, hitting like a wet nutsack, let's be honest. It was just a slap in the face. Let's be clear on this. Now, I've been on the PTR and decided to play around with this. I spent the day just fidgeting around, trying different things. We're not certainly not demonstrating perfect play here. I was trying different things, seeing what I felt hit harder, what felt like it did a little bit more damage, all that kind of stuff. Running around in about 5-2-2 gear, some mixes of PvP gear thrown into there just to get us some nice meaty damage and give some relative rage generation. It's not enough. Let's just call that out. It is really nowhere near enough. This is a weird change that actually adds a little bit more depth to the spec, there's no doubt about that, but ultimately it's just nowhere near enough. I can tell you right now, this is just not going to get the job done in terms of making ARMS an interesting and possibly even overall better spec than Fury. What we're likely to see is the choice coming between ARMS and Fury, and neither of them actually performing particularly well. There's a Deep Wounds change, which increased its damage by 65%. Ain't gonna be enough. I'm telling you now, that ain't gonna be enough unless something pretty dramatic in gear happens. The big problem that hasn't been addressed, my god, and what we wanted to be addressed, is not the way ARMS played particularly. Yes, it was crap, but most people were playing Fury anyway. It was this problem of how the spec works. This was the problem. Traditionally, and I don't try and be rose-tinted about this, I'm just telling you what happened, is that we just had these few basic spells and they hit really hard and it was a lot of fun. And the more gear we got, the more rage we had, which we generally just decided to throw into Heroic Strike, until by the end of the expansion, when we were in this crushing gear, we were spamming the crap out of it, and that felt pretty cool. It felt really cool just to have these same basic buttons that we push, and now we're getting to furiously spam our Heroic Strike, pardon the pun, but that's what we did. We were in a total frenzy of spamming Heroic Strike, and it was good fun. It was a nice little bit of fun. What we seem to have done here is trying to fall into a little bit of a Ret Paladin syndrome, almost, is we just have these weird choices to make. So on the base of it, Slam generally accounts for about 7-8% of a normal warrior's damage. Is that, well, it's got all these buffs while under Colossus Smash, it's got all these decisions to be made while under Sweeping Strikes. How do we work this? Is it a real big DPS increase? What's happening there? Some people are claiming it's about a 1% DPS increase. I kind of disagree with that. After playing around with it a little bit, Slam hits like a motherfucking truck, especially under the effects of Colossus Smash. So when you drop that Colossus Smash, I'm talking about ARMS here, that Slam really does start making some big numbers. You start and Overpower very, very quickly falls more into this wet, soppy, almost unbuffed, wild strike-ish kind of nonsense, which is just this spell that we press because, quite frankly, we don't have the conditions and we don't really have the resources to press anything else. Big problem warriors suffer from is waiting for Colossus Smash. Oh, derpy dirt mode. We just got to sit around, wait for Colossus Smash, and then we go and blow our load all over the mob, then Colossus Smash wears off and we just wait again. Fury has this even more so with the 20-second delay. ARMS doesn't really have that in terms of the procs of Colossus Smash, but what I will say is that spells are just far too goddamn expensive. And what we have now is the ability to unload, but only for very brief periods. And you'll see kind of this going on in the background is Colossus Smash procs. I've built up some rage, I did some rage pooling. And what do we see is that, yeah, after a couple of slams, because it's so expensive, yes, it hits really, really hard. It does, it hits really hard. But very quickly, I'm just out of rage. And not even Immortal Strike will give me the rage to do another slam. So despite building rage and doing whatnot, it tends to just wear out very quickly. And then you're back to the old problem of just waiting for a little bit more rage to do something. Rage is just a pain in the ass right now. I wish this resource would go away. A lot of warriors would kind of agree with that, especially seasoned warriors, that rage is just generally a pain in the ass. Just preventing, it's almost a fun prevention resource. And that's a problem. The other problem that we had was, of course, our survivability. Sure, Die by the Sword in ARMS is pretty damn good, but we're going to be looking at a lot of Fury, and because of rage and because of our lack of ability to sort of prevent dangerous situations outside a shield wall, is we had this weird problem where if we have to move away, we actually get completely double boned. And why is that? Because a lot of our rage actually comes from the ability to attack. And then if we move away, we actually stop generating rage, and then we run into huge problems. And then people are saying, well, oh, I kind of need to build up resources before, offensive resources, before I move away and stop doing damage, because I might need those resources for something else, which is going to kill me. Nobody likes spending offensive resources on trying to stay alive. Not that that's a big problem. We just do not have that many ways of staying alive. We have some nice little defensive stance switches. We have a shield wall, and Fury doesn't really get the benefit of anything else on top of that, besides increasing health of the whole raid. Not the best situation to be in, making us just quite literally a liability in raids comparative to everybody else. That's the sad part. A lot of people are not spending resources that are offensive resources in order to stay alive. And moving away from a situation that is going to be killer doesn't actually hurt other people. Take a rogue, for example. If he has to move away for a second, ain't that bad, because his energy is constantly building. He's not spending resources in order to survive. What he's actually doing is building resources up, so when he does get back to the boss, he's actually just going to slam it in the face. Assuming, of course, he doesn't overcap his energy, but God, wouldn't we be thankful if we could overcap our rage. That would be quite nice, so I could come back and take some names. These fixes are not enough, which is a shame. I wanted to go back to my warrior. I still love the class, and it's still got a lot of nostalgic memories of great times thrown in there, but it's not the class I quite remember. So, interesting to see that this is the final throwdown of what the warrior is going to get in 5.4. It's not addressing what people were saying the big concerns, such as, hey, we keep dying. We just do not have these abilities that other classes have, and they're certainly not as easy to activate and easy to maneuver as everybody else is. Plus, it generally, if I do want to use something, is it costs me offensive resources. If I have to move away, I actually stop generating resources. And for the love of God, stop making us so reliant on crit. It's a nightmare. Any Fury Warrior will tell you that the reliance on critical strike at the expense of literally everything else just isn't fun, because you can't get that 100% crit, and no matter how much crit you have, those fucking bloodthirsts just aren't going to crit sometimes, and then you're left in this little well of a lot of problems. A lot of problems that just don't seem to be getting fixed. There's a lot of aspects that just aren't fun. The slam cleave, I did a little bit. I'm showing you a bit in the background. It's alright. I don't really care about my AoE damage. It's my single target damage I care about, and you don't seem to have done enough with either spec to warrant bringing more warriors, other than that, of course, obnoxious skull banner. Sad times. I want to see what you think. Take it easy, ballers. I'll see you again.